Hi to everyone. This is Clay, and what a guy he is. And this is going to be a talk about talking, a talk about communication. So the first thing I want to communicate is I live in Bozeman, Montana, and I've been in the snow for 8.5 months. I look out my window right now, and there's still 3 feet of snow out there. But luckily today the sun is shining. So any day now, my house is going to float off the mountain, and we'll see what we do after that. So there's full and complete communication. What do you guys think of that? Now, cultivating your communication skills. Now, cultivation means building, making it better. All right? Taking a look at how you're communicating now and how you can make it better. Who would I have to be to fully communicate at all times? All right? I mean, what would your life be like if you communicated fully and completely with everyone around you, and then they turned around and communicated back with you? I mean, think about that for just a second. What would it be like? Also think about how many times have you not heard what you thought you heard and went off and did something, you found out you were doing the wrong thing, or the people you were looking for didn't say what you thought they said. Or how about this? How many of you have been, someone's talking to you and you spend more time creating the answer to the earlier part of their speaking than actually listening to them? I mean, I could go on and on with these examples, all right? Like, what would your work be like if you had full and complete communication? How much more would you get accomplished? So that comes from how much stuff do you have to redo in a day? Or for that matter, in a week, right? How much better would you feel if you didn't withhold your feelings? I mean, you actually said, you know, I'm not feeling well. I didn't hear what you said. Could you please repeat yourself? Or how about this? I'm not sure I got what you said. Is this what you said? So that you were absolutely a stand to be full and complete in your communications with just about everybody. And for the men out there, how about doing this with your wife? And for the women out there, how about doing this with your husband? What would it be like to have a family that fully communicated? I'm pausing now so you can let that sink in, you know? Pretty good, huh? So now, how different would your world be if you had clear direction from all those around you and you gave clear direction to all others? What if every time you listened to somebody or said something to somebody, you checked in and asked them what they got out of what you said? I know your brains are going, well, that would take too much time, but how much time do you spend correcting somebody that didn't hear you correctly? Think about that one, all right? What if you gave up assuming other people? Now, assumption, isn't there some saying about that? Assumptions. They make a ha-ha out of you and others. Yeah, delete. So what if you gave up assuming other people and they gave up assuming you? How many times have you assumed what they said? Or how many times have you talked to the same person where you assume what they're going to say? Or how many times have you talked to somebody and you got hooked by the shirt they were wearing? What you heard was based on how much you liked or didn't like his or her clothing. I mean, there's all kinds of filters that come up in communication. And the bigger you get, the longer you're on the planet, the older you get, the more you have to be present to this, because the more experience you have of people. And you either get hooked by them, or you listen to them, or you don't listen to them, or you have some predisposed thought about what's going on. So it's like, hey, how do we get over this? Who do we have to be? What do we have to do to make sure that every time we communicate, the listener gets it? And every time the listener communicates back to you, you get it. We think about how cool that would be. Now, how about, here's another couple of examples, some more. Your friend, your spouse, your family member, your team member tells you some information. That information creates a whole host of feelings and emotions, some rational, others are not rational. You choose not to say anything about what you're feeling and choose not to clear up any potential miscommunications. So instead, you sulk. Instead, you get your feelings hurt. Instead, you shut down and you allow your emotions to take over an innocent communication. And before long, that issue that you're upset about takes on a life of its own. It actually has an identity in making a mountain out of a molehill. Now think about that. Now all of you on this call today, I want you to think back when the last time was that you absolutely went bonkers over somebody or what they said. But what they said didn't deserve to have you going bonkers. And so why do we get mad at people when they don't deserve it? It's because we got stored up mad. Think about that now. We got all kinds of miscommunications that we're living inside of, and all kinds of hurt feelings, and all kinds of why, what's wrong with them, and all kinds of, gee, I thought I did the best I could do to communicate with them, but they still didn't get it. And so impatience takes over, hurt feelings take over. So you really start degrading everybody else. Then all of a sudden you start killing people. And I don't mean actually kill them, but you start taking them apart piece by piece because they just asked you if you wanted some more cream in your coffee. I hope you're smiling now. So that's what it sounds like. What I just said is you get far madder than the circumstance requires. Now, how many of you done that? And what's the source of it? All right, and the source is the lack of full and complete communication. So I'm talking about communication around everything from a job that is to be done to what is going on in your heart of hearts or your feelings. How many of you have talked to somebody today even that you talked about how you were feeling today, whether you were feeling ill, whether you were tired of coming to work? Today's Wednesday. Oh, my God, let me see. The way it works is Saturday, Sunday's the weekend, all right? And so I never call anybody until Monday at noon, if not Tuesday morning, because if I call them on Monday, they're still in the weekend. If I call them on Friday, they're getting ready for the weekend. So I do all my calls usually between Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, usually between 8 and noon. And then on top of that, I never talk to anybody after between 1 and 2 because they're digesting food and all their thinking blood, the blood that's supposed to be in the brain, is down in their stomach digesting food. So a really hot salesman taught me that a long, long time ago. So how do you really generate full and complete communication? You have to be present to the people you're talking to. All right? You're going to have a slide in a few minutes that's going to be hilarious, but it's exactly what I'm talking about. So how do we cultivate our communication skills so that, one, we can communicate fully and completely everywhere and all the time? Now, I'm 70 years old. I've been coaching for 36 years. I'm not sure I've gotten there yet, where I fully communicate completely everywhere and all the time. But I have gotten so when I know I didn't, I call them back. I say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not sure I said what I wanted you to hear. I'm not sure that you got what I said. And, all right, the other thing you got to look out for is when we do have a communication misstep, all right, and we're present enough to know that we've done it, you have to clean it up. You can't assume, oh, that's all right, it won't matter, all right? Now, here's some tips on how to keep your act together around communication. The number one biggest tip is to have your head be present to where your feet are, or to have your head be present to the telephone call you're on. I mean, this picture is the greatest thing ever. Do you think this guy's present to what's being said in the conference room? I don't think so. And guess who we are? We're this guy. Look at that. We are this guy. There is absolutely no question. Multitasking. How about that? Or how about this? You're in one conference, you finish that conference, you go into the next conference, but your head's still in the first conference. Or how about this? You have to go to the bathroom, so you leave the conference, you go to the bathroom, and somebody next to you is saying something to you. And you go back in the conference, and all you can think about is what was said while you were going to the bathroom. I mean, all kinds of filters get in the way. Staying in full and complete communication is a full-time job. And if you're not writing it down, if you think you can remember it, guess what? You're in for a big surprise. You cannot remember it. All right? So being an effective communicator is as much about what you say, all right, as who you are being when you say it. So who is this guy being? If he's talking about finances, if he's talking about what's going on and who needs to be moved up or who needs to be let go or how we need to expand the business, and this guy's standing there in a Hawaiian shirt with, you know, the lei around his neck, yeah, I'm going to listen to him. Right on, dude. Okay? Unless, of course, our company is selling leis. Pretty hot, huh? I thought that was humorous. Okay, here's a quote for you from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Who you are is speaking so loudly that I can't hear what you're saying. Now, some of us are big guys or big gals, and some of us get our way by talking over others or talking louder than others. Or how about this one? We talk more than anybody else. So people around us just let us G-jaw until you're done, and then just walk away. And you can't be sure what they got and what you didn't got because you wore them out. Okay? Issues that filter the effectiveness of our communication can be just about anything. What's something, think about it, what's something that filters your communication? Or what filters you communicate? All right? So your tone of voice. If your tone of voice shows anger or impatience or anything else, it's going to affect how people listen. How you're dressed. If you're talking to a board and you're doing all kinds of things to let them know how well you're doing and everything else, if you walk in there dragging a surfboard, a pair of cutoffs, and a T-shirt, you know, they're going to have a little trouble listening to you. Right? What we think we know about the person we are communicating with. Like, what are we sure about the person we're talking to? And you know the truth is, nobody's ever sure. Because the experience you had with them the last time you talked to them is not what's going on now. You have to be able to forgive on your feet. I remember way back when I was giving a talk, I think there was 500 or 600 people in the, or maybe 1,000 people in the room, and I was giving a talk on something, I don't remember the topic, but one gentleman stood up and started making me wrong up one side and down the other. And I had to remember, absolutely had to remember, that what was going on was this guy's problem. It wasn't the room's problem. I couldn't let him take the room over. So I had to forgive him, say, hey, can I get back to you on that? And then get back to the room and keep going in the talk I was doing. So you can't let yourself get mad or want to, defend yourself when you got a whole room full of people that you want to make a point with. Now, here's a good one, too. What about body language? What's it like when you're trying to listen to somebody that's standing up either across the table from you or in front of you, and they're all bent over, and they're reading from notes, and their head's pointing towards the ground, and their belt's undone? Think about that. Well, maybe not their belt's undone, but the rest of it's bad enough. Or how about this? If you ever listen to somebody talk, his breath is so bad that the hairs are burning in your nose, I mean, that's bad. And guess what? You report to them. Isn't that terrific? So body language has a lot to do with it. So vocal tone, body language, how you're dressed, what you know about the person before you got there, and the last phone call you were on before starting a new conversation with this person. All right? Have you ever been on a phone call with somebody when you knew they weren't paying attention? You could tell. And every once in a while you slip in a question and they just bomb it. Absolutely terrible. Or you really believe somebody has a speech impediment because the guy's stuttering all over the place. Or the gal is. So this isn't just a guy thing. All right? This is a human thing. These are just a few examples and types of things that get in the way of communication. So, who do you or we have to be? It's not what we have to do, but who do we have to be to get past all of these filters? Well, here's another thing that comes along with adult life. You have to be responsible, but mostly you have to be present. You can't be talking to somebody with your head thinking about something else. I mean, it doesn't work. You'll end up catching yourself and laugh at yourself while you're up on stage. I know I've done that a couple times. So you have to be present. Your head has to be where your feet are. I think I've said that many times in many webinars and all my classes and everything else, is I stand the whole room up and I tell them to look down. And they stand up and they look down, and the heavy-set people can't get past their stomachs. They haven't seen their feet in 10 or 20 years. But for the thinner people, they look down, they can see their feet. And I ask them, okay, what would it be like to have your head be where your feet are all the time? And you can hear a pin drop in the room. The whole room goes silent because they get what it means. What's it mean, no matter where your feet are, is your head's in the same place. The speaker in any communication is responsible. Now, this one you guys got to get. The speaker in any communication is responsible for where they leave the listener, which means you as a speaker have to be present to who you are being and where you are leaving the listener. It's that simple. Now, in addition to that, we'll talk about something a little bit later, is where the listener has to be responsible. But right now, the biggest thing in communication, the number one biggest thing, is making sure that if you're speaking to someone or to many, that you're in their listening. You have their listening. Everybody got that? Make a note. And this is a tough one because we're always in so much of a hurry. You think we're gonna, we're gonna come back to it. We're gonna work on it later. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that, and all this other stuff. And the truth is, you usually have one shot in most of your communications to make sure that those that you're speaking to got what you're saying, and it's hard. So now, the next thing, besides keeping your head present where your feet are, is talking straight. So in my world, when I want to shoot straight with somebody, and I want to set up the listening of a person you are communicating with, or I am communicating with, especially if I'm going to take the time out of my world to communicate with them, I'm going to ask permission to shoot straight. And when you ask permission to shoot straight, it gets their attention. Believe me, I don't know how long you'll keep it, but you'll keep it for 30 seconds or so. I mean, think about this. You walk up to somebody and you ask them, hey, I need to shoot straight with you. And their whole life flashes in front of them. That's what happens with most people. I mean, they're cool about it. They look at the ground, they become rug inspectors. And they look at the ground and they look all over the place, and then they finally look back in your eyes, and you just sit there and look at them straight in the eye and smile and just say, I need to shoot straight with you. And then you need to not only ask permission to speak straight, then you need to absolutely shoot straight with them around what you want to say. Communication is not only about speaking what you want to, what you want heard, but the listener's hearing is what you want them to hear. You got it? So you got to be responsible. What you say gets over there as unfiltered as possible. They don't make up anything, so they get what you say. Now think about this. What would it be like if every person you spoke with, especially at a business, that they could give you back what you said? What do you think it would be like to have your life be that way? Think about that. Are we thinking? One of the things, Beth, about this kind of webinar, I can't see anybody's faces, so I don't know whether, they're really thinking or they're off talking to each other.
No, they're here. I can see that they're all here, yes.
They're all here?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, now one caution about straight talk. It is not permission to make people wrong. You don't ever ask permission to shoot straight and then beat somebody up. Because guess what happens the next time when you ask permission to shoot straight? Their guard's going to go up. They're not going to be able to hear anything. So don't ever make anybody wrong, or don't ever beat somebody up after asking to shoot straight. When you're asking to shoot straight, you need to kind of soften the edge a little bit. All right? Make sure that their back's not pushed straight against the wall. Make sure they don't feel like you want them to stand in the corner with their nose against the corner. None of that. It's just a mistake has been made, and you want to make sure it doesn't happen again. And that you believe in them enough to communicate with them. Okay? Okay, now the third point I want to make is don't assume anybody or anything. Remember I said earlier? I mean, I personally can remember doing talks in all the various organizations I've spoken to or whatever, when in the front row or the second row, somebody's wearing a sport coat or a shirt or something that reminds me of something negative happened in my life. Or reminds me some kid was wearing a shirt when I was 12, and he just beat the crap out of me. And so, haha, there's that shirt. I'm going to get back at that guy. And that guy has nothing to do with it. But that's what we do as human beings. And then we find ourselves doing it. We're right in the middle of getting back at him, and then we go, what am I doing? And I'm sure all of you have had those experiences. And so that's when you stop and you clean up your act. You say, whoop, wait a minute. Here's what I'm doing. And you tell them what you did. And believe it or not, they will understand. Guess why? Because they do the same thing. We human beings all do the same stuff. We are all lacking full of complete communication. Like right now, it's hard for me to communicate because my mouth is so dry. So you guys are going, well, drink some water. I'm going, okay. Pretty good, huh? So there's all kinds of variables. There's all kinds of impasses. There's all kinds of reasons why we don't fully communicate. Most of the time, it's because we're in a hurry. We always have more to do than we can do, and we think that's success. Oh, boy, I've got more to do than I can do. I must be successful. Aren't I cool? And the truth is, that's not the truth. If you got more to do than you can do, guess what? You need to learn how to delegate, which is a whole different talk. So, assumptions are roadblocks to clear and effective communication, and they often create problems that are completely avoidable. So what's that mean? That means if you quit assuming stuff, you don't get in any trouble. That means if you quit assuming stuff, you don't have to speak from your 12-year-old side. If you quit assuming stuff, you can get how great people really are. If you quit assuming stuff, what would it be like if you went around all the time and just assumed that people weren't listening to you? I mean, that would kind of make you not want to talk anymore, wouldn't it? I mean, you kind of walk around talking to yourself because you're sure nobody's talking to you or nobody's listening to you. You see, you can't assume that what you want the person to hear is what they're hearing. You need to language your speech or your talk so that the person can hear what you want them to hear. Pretty good, huh? So, how do we do that? First, I'm going to give you some assumptions, examples. Then I'm going to ask you, how do you get somebody to hear what you want them to hear? And it's all about understanding, who you're speaking to. Oh, here's one, Henry Winkler. Assumptions are the termites of relationships. And I got to tell you, when I saw this, knowing who the Fonz was, I had a hard time having the Fonz actually saying this. So, I gave it to you. You can do what you want with it, but I watched the Fonz for so many years. I wasn't sure he's quite up to this type of speaking. But that's an assumption I'm making, isn't it? Okay, assumption examples. We assume those we work with can read our minds. Where else do we do that? Where do we assume that our minds can be read? I'll give you a hint. It's at home. Like, I remember coming home many, many moons ago when I had a construction company, and I was tired, and I was sweating, and I was all dirty, and my boots were filthy and everything else. And I came home and walked in the house, and Susan would go, wow, how'd your day go? And I looked at her. I don't say this, that'd be death. But what I was thinking was, my God, woman, we've been married for 15 years. Don't you know what I'm feeling? Like, I'm assuming she's supposed to know how my day went. She doesn't have a clue. Her day went great. My day sucked. So you get what I'm saying? You can't assume anything, all right? We assume how our spouse will react in a given situation or to a given request. How's that? We get angry with people and blame them when they fail to do what we think they ought to know. Of course, now, I never do that, but that's why I'm teaching it to all you guys out there, because I'm so incredibly cool, I don't do this one anymore. If you believe that, I got a bridge to sell you. Okay, we assume we know what children are thinking and are capable of. You want to get in trouble? Live in that one for a while. We assume we will be there tomorrow, so we put off making a difference today. It's like, nah, I don't have to make a difference today. I don't have to help anybody today. I'll do it tomorrow. Wrong, bad, bad, bad. We assume we know stuff. either about the world or about people around us. And this stops our listening, our growth, and our effectiveness. All right? Knowing is where learning stops. Write that one down. Knowing is where learning stops. Whenever you're sure you absolutely know everything about some topic, guess what? The learning about it absolutely comes to a quick halt. When we assume, we rob ourselves of being present to what is possible. We risk becoming stagnant, not moving forward with something when we should have. We stop our creativity. We risk making avoidable mistakes and losing face. Now, losing face can sometimes be, an absolute relationship killer. Losing face is terrible at work when it happens. You guys know that. Being embarrassed because of something you said or you thought you knew and it turned out differently. How about this? How about if you're working with kids and you assume you know how to build a bridge out of toothpicks? And so you start showing them how to build a bridge out of toothpicks and they go, nah, you don't know anything, Mr. Nelson. Watch this. And they do stuff with toothpicks you never even thought of before. So one of the ways you can quit making assumptions is to just remember when you're dealing with kids, you don't want to ever assume that you know more than they do. It's like this one about, you always ask your kids what they want to be when they grow up. And the truth is, you're asking them to get the answer to that question because you don't have one. Pretty cool, huh? So every time you think you really know something and you're absolutely sure you're right about it, learning stops. I mean, look at the legal system. Look at all kinds of things that happen in that system. So it's all about not carrying the weight of knowing, all right? All right, now step number 4, make sure, all right, those you are communicating with understand what you have communicated or what you are communicating with. Do this by simply asking them what they got from your communication. Now, here's the way I do this so I don't embarrass anybody. Is I say to somebody I'm listening to or a group I'm listening to, if I've given them the job that I want them to do, all right, and we need to attain a certain result, I say to them, before I quit talking, before I ask any questions, I say to them, I can remember back in my career when the people I was reporting to gave me some things to do, and they told me exactly what they wanted done and everything else. And I went off and did it. And I found out I did the absolute wrong thing. Now, I don't want that to happen to you, so could you kindly give me back what I said to you? And see, that way of checking on what they got doesn't make anybody feel wrong or less than or beat up or anything else. It has the family side of communication come about inside the room that you're talking in, whether it's at work or at home. That's a good one to use when you're talking with your kids, right? Teenagers don't buy that act too much, but they don't hear much of what you say anyway. They don't really hear what you said when they were 17 until they're 23. Actually, nowadays, 27. All right? So it's like, how do we make sure that what I said is what they got? Did you give that story about you got in trouble in your earlier career or your earlier days about assuming you got what somebody said to you and you were wrong and you don't want that to happen to them? So please, make sure you say please. Please tell me what you got out of what I said, and then you be quiet. You have to go silent at that point, which you have to wait for them to start talking. If you help them out, no good. You have to force them to talk, okay? And then you can help them out from there. Oh, and it would be a good idea if they say the wrong thing back. Don't say, no, that's not it. You didn't get that right, right? In fact, you shouldn't say no at all. You should say, well, that's good, but what I really want you to get is. So you want to soften the punch. You want to soften the communication. You want to make sure there's as little places they can feel made wrong as possible. And then what that develops is trust in the people that work for you. And once you get that trust developed, your life is going to be much, much better. Okay? All right, now, I want to speak to the listener side now. And so this, most of what today's talk has been about as in communication has been what the speaker does and what the speaker has to be careful of. Now, here's the listener side. And this is mostly for you, because you guys will be doing most of the talking. All right, don't make assumptions about what others communicate to you. In other words, if they say something that's just completely off the wall, don't question their intellect. Don't question, what they did last night. Don't make up stuff about them. Remember, the human mind is a walking, talking, make-it-up machine. And if we can make something up about somebody, we will, I guarantee it. And it will be instantaneous, right there on the spot. It's stuff you never say to anybody, but you store it away about them in case you could ever use it. I mean, that's terrible to hear, but that's the truth. Don't make assumptions about what others communicate to you. Take the time to stop the person when you need clarification or more explanation. Now, that line item right there, that idea is probably the best example you can make for people that you want to really hear you, is if they don't understand something, let them know it's okay to stop you. Let them know it's okay. Don't say, oh, wait till I'm done. I'll come back to that. No, handle it right then. So take the time to stop the person when you need clarification or more explanation. Make sure you do that. Don't wait for someone to ask you what you got from a communication before you leave a meeting or hang up the phone and say, before we go, I want to make sure I'm clear about what you need, expect, or what you said, or whatever. So then what you do is you say, this is what I got is. If you wait to the end of the communication, have you ever noticed how when you're done talking to somebody, you were done 10 minutes or 10 seconds before you were done? Your mind has already gone to the next communication or the hanging up of the phone and then dialing the next number and so on and so forth. So what's said in that last bit of time together doesn't have any place to fit. It's out of sync. That's why it's better to ask, hey, I didn't understand what you just said, after it's said instead of at the end of a communication. You got it? Hello, hello? Everybody got it? Say yes. Everybody say yes. Okay. As the speaker in any communication, you are responsible for where you lead people. Always. All right? Always. As the speaker in any communication, you are responsible for where you lead people always. There is not an exception to that statement. Now, all of you have to remember, as a speaker in any communication, you are responsible for where you lead people always. I don't care how fast you're running. I don't care, whether you're in your car and you're talking on the phone when you shouldn't be. I don't care what's going on. I don't care what the circumstances are. If you're trying to if you're communicating with somebody, no matter what the circumstance, it's your responsibility to make sure they got what you wanted them to get. All right? So full and complete communication really is the responsibility of both sides of any conversation. All right? As a speaker, full and complete communication requires you to be present to what you are saying it too, and how it is landing on the listener's side. Now, think about this. How in the heck do you check in the middle of a talk to see what's landing on the listener's side? I'll give you a hint. You ask. And the reason why most speakers don't ask is because the speaker doesn't want the listener to think that, we don't believe in them or that there's something wrong with them or whatever. So that's when you say again, back in my career, I thought I heard what was being said to me. I didn't. And I went and did what I did, and it was wrong. I don't want that to happen to you. So please kind of tell me what you've got in my talk so far today. Okay? So you got to be clear about what you're saying, who you're saying it to, and how it's landing on the listener side. And as a listener, you have to be really understanding. You have to really be, not be understanding, but you have to be understanding what is being said and be present. You know, like your head is where your feet are. You're not looking at some girl sitting next to you. You're not thinking about your next meeting. You're not thinking about how mad your wife is. You're not thinking about whether is today my anniversary, is it tomorrow. You want to be able to give back to the speaker what was said. You want to make sure you really understand it. Otherwise, it's an absolute total waste of your time. You haven't got time to waste. You do not have time to waste. All right? The only time you can waste time is you're out in the middle of the ocean on your boat. Okay, so you want to make sure you really understand what's been said or is being said. Anything less is a waste of your time. Now think about it. The lack of full and complete communication has broken families apart. The lack of full and communication has destroyed multi-million-dollar corporations. I mean, the lack of full and complete communication, believe this, has even caused wars. I mean, get real. Can you get that? All right? Yes, it's heavy. But if one of the keys to many relationships is simply to communicate fully and completely, the answer to many problems isn't nearly as difficult as we think. How many marriages have come apart because people stopped talking to each other? How many marriages, I mean, what do marriage and family people do? They get people to talk to each other about what they like, don't like, what they're mad about, what they're holding, da-da-da-da-da. And then they have to teach them how to forgive so they can go on with their life. I mean, that's what kids do. Kids don't learn to hold on to something that's hurt them until they get old enough to see us doing it. Us, I mean adults, okay? I mean, what would happen if everyone on the planet communicated fully and completely all the time? I mean, look at this slide. Happy faces everywhere. You know, I wish I had the Happy Face song on here now. We could all dance around going happy face. Da-da-da-da-da-da. All right? I mean, think about it. It really lightens your heart. It really puts a smile on your face. It really makes life a lot easier. You know? And the people that don't want to have a happy face, they don't have to. We just don't play with them. All right? But pretty soon you'll drag them over to your way of being because they'll be all by themselves. So what would happen if everybody on the planet communicated fully and completely at all times? Now just take a second and think about that. I mean, let's just squeeze it down a little bit. What if everybody in your families, all right, communicated fully and completely at all times? You and your wife, you and your kids. What would your life be like? You know, what if you could get mad if it's okay? What if you could have a whole week without getting mad if it's okay? Duh. Think about that now. Now, on a much more global level, I mean, just think about it. Just think if the Russians and the Americans could stop being jerks to each other. And the stock market would go back up again. I mean, God, my retirement money's stuck in the stock market, and I'm eating it just because the Russians and the Americans don't like each other. That might not be true, but I'll use that one. The potential result is absolutely mind-boggling. And it starts with me. It starts with you. It starts with each and every human being on this planet. Full and complete communication, it's an awesome tool. And it's available to all of us. All we have to do is choose to use it. Don't let our circumstances push us so hard we forget to communicate. And there's not a single human being on the planet that doesn't need a hug once in a while. And a hug could occur like listening. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got on this topic. Well, that's not true. It's all the time I got. So thanks for being here, and let's rock and roll. I need some, would you guys type in some ideas on what you want the next talk to be on? And, you know, this talk was asked by some folks from our last talk. So let me know. I can talk on just about anything, especially a lot of things I don't know about. I can really talk about those things.
Clay, you do have a few questions.
Oh, okay, go.
Okay, so when working in a group, how do you get everyone, and I'm assuming this group is probably full of a lot of big personalities, how do you get everyone to walk away from a discussion with one single agreed upon direction?
is you ask one person and you pick the person that can speak pretty well, that might cover everybody else's thinking. And you ask them what they got and what they're going to walk away with. And then you coach them into what you want them to walk away with. And that'll get the whole rest of the group.
The next one is, I'm a big guy.
Are you writing these questions out yourself? Tell the truth. Is everybody gone off? Is everybody gone off the webinar? Or
no, they're not. Everybody's still here.
Is it just you and me talking? Oh my God. Okay, go ahead.
The next question. I'm a big guy, and sometimes people find me intimidating.
Yeah.
What suggestions do you have for putting people at ease?
Number 1, tone of voice. Number 2, stop over talking everybody. All right. Number 3, if you practice in the mirror at home, having a soft look on your face. All right. I unfortunately have a pair of eyeballs that when I look at people, they think I'm going to do surgery on them. And I don't really mean to do that, but that's my, concentrated eyeball look. So what you have to do is always have a smile on your face. Never talk to somebody with your face all wrinkled up, your surgical eyeballs going, your over-talking power at its max, and your tone of voice that makes them think, that's it, they're dead already. How's that? That's pretty complete, isn't it?
Very good. And I like the example of the surgical eyeballs.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay. How do you, when you've made an unintentional communication misstep and unintentionally offended somebody, you realize it, you've apologized, but that person really isn't hearing it, they don't want to accept it. Is there anything else you can or should do? Yeah.
Once you are clear that you've made a mistake or that you've offended somebody, all you can do after you've attempted to clean it up is you have to wait. And usually in 3 or 4 days or 2 or 3 days, if you go back and attempt to clean it up again, usually they will allow it. But it has to be done one-on-one. It can't be done one-on-group.
Yes.
And no, wait a minute, one more thing. If you continue to look to resolve the issue or to make better what you made wrong, just your effort will make them understand that you mean it.
You did have some listener input on the big guy question that I wanted to share.
Okay.
And one tip that she has added is that if at all possible, be at a lower level than the person you are speaking with. So maybe sit down or don't be on a step above them.
Oh, that's very good. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you, Laura.
Yeah, or you could just pick them up over your head. A little humor there, guys.
I'm visualizing that, and it's making me laugh.
Yeah.
So the next question is, how do you handle someone, a co-worker, I'm assuming, or just somebody in your life, who's just being downright rude? They seem like they know they are, and they just don't really care, but you can see it's affecting people around you.
Now, is this in the middle of the conversation, or that's just who they are as a human being?
I don't really know. It doesn't say what context.
If it's showing up in the middle of the conversation, if it's bad enough, you might want to take a break in the meeting, in the talk in the meeting, and take this person outside and say, hey, do you realize how you're occurring? Okay, see if you can clean it up that way.
Okay.
If you can't take a break, you say to them, hey, I'd like to have other people speak in this conference now, so would you mind just saving yours and let me talk to this guy?
Got it.
So you avoid discussions with them.
Got it. So I am saving the last question that I think is kind of biggest. Oh, actually, there's another one that's in here, too, that just came in. How do you approach a quote-unquote unapproachable boss? You need to communicate with them on something. How do you approach them when you're kind of fearful of them?
Well, no matter whether you're sitting or standing, you always look them straight in the eye. Number 2, you never talk down or make them wrong. Number 3, you get real clear about what you want to discuss from the very beginning. And then you don't take more than 3 or 4 minutes to say what your opinion is or how you feel about whatever the topic is. And if they want to spend more time with you on the discussion, they will say, let's talk about this for a minute. That's how you do it.
I'm going to give you just one more here. And this has to do with family. And this is when you are a parent and the other parent in your relationship is like at odds, constantly butting heads with a child.
Yeah.
How do you know if that's just a phase that's going on or something bigger that needs to be addressed? I mean, do you have any input or thoughts on that?
Yeah, number one, it's not only the phase of the child, it could be the phase of the parent that they're butting heads with. Okay? So the conversation has to be with the parent, from parent to parent, see if they can contribute to them. All right? Mm-hmm. And the parent that's having a hard time with the child, if they're asking what else I could do, that's when you jump in there and give them some ideas and plant some seeds on how else they can handle the child. All right? So and I have a son that is now going to be 24 years old, and he's just starting to figure out that some of my answers to some of his questions were pretty cool. All right? I mean, he still wants to borrow money a lot and stuff like that, but at least he's got a job and he's starting to find out what it's like to be out in the world and so on and so forth. So a lot of times it's just give up the argument. It's not worth arguing about, because after it's all said and done, after 10 years go by, it doesn't matter. Okay?
Very good. Well, thank you. That is all the questions I had, which were actually quite a few today. So thank you, everybody, for contributing those questions. I know I've heard frequently after webinars that all the questions that people contribute really does make a difference for everybody who's listening, even though maybe they didn't submit a question. So thank you. And
let people know they can call me if they have a question, they want to talk, they can call, no charge, let's rock and roll.
Absolutely. And Clay's phone number is up here on the screen. Feel free to give him a call, email. You can email me, Beth@claynelsonlifebalance.com, and I can get you on Clay's calendar as well. So we appreciate all of you being here. Thank you very much, and be watching your emails for the next webinar topic and date. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.